Welcome in to Practical Wellness Radio. I'm Ted, and Cody and I are super excited to have you guys in on our 10th episode at Practical Wellness Radio. 10 episodes, so we're pretty much experts at this. This will be the best podcast you've ever listened to, I'm sure of it. And part of that will have to do with the fact that we've got Bethany Praska on the show today. And Bethany is currently manager of the Iowa River Landing Lululemon store in Iowa City, Iowa. But she's got quite the collegiate track career, and we talk a lot about that. Some of her accolades include a 2-time All-American, 3-time Big Ten champion, ultramarathoner, ran a 100-mile race. We touched on that at the end of the show, and that's probably my favorite topic. She dives really deep into the whole thought process of attacking that and kind of the toll it took on her. It's really, really intriguing. But, being that Bethany is maybe one of kind of the most decorated individuals as far as athletically that we've had on the show to this part. For our warm-up waves today, we're talking about winning. And, winning is a weird thing, right? Because, chasing winning is going to cause some setbacks. Like chasing after victory is going to cause setbacks. Chasing it may cause a lot of self-doubt. And chasing it isn't always fair. Just because you work the hardest towards something, you still may not receive the justice and be beat by someone who you outworked. And the question is, why would you work so hard towards something when there's not a guarantee you're going to get it returned to you? And I think when you think about it, the only guarantee is if you don't chase it, you're losing. So the question is, how willing are you to run towards victory when the distance is unknown? All right, and here we go. We're getting started with Bethany Praska. We're happy to have you. Bethany is, I got to brag about you a little bit, Bethany, because this is pretty cool. I don't know if we've had anybody on the show to this point with some of these cool accolades. So Bethany is a 2-time All-American, 3-time Big Ten champion, ultramarathoner, and all around kind of a badass when you start listing some of those things. She's also the manager of the Iowa River Landing Lululemon store in Iowa City, Iowa. And first off, Bethany, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I think just so everybody knows, can you tell us a little bit about those accolades? And I know it's maybe a little bit hard to open up initially right away and start kind of bragging on yourself, but it's cool. And I think people like to hear about it. So tell us about the All-American, the Big Ten champion. What were those in?
Those were in the 600 meter, 800 meter, and then the 4x400 relay. So those are the 3 Big Ten titles, and then All-American in the 800 indoor and the 4x4. We were second team All-American for the outdoor relay. So yeah, track and field at University of Iowa, go Hawks. I had 4 years of eligibility there, and it was, I just have the best things to say and to brag about all of those coaches and the people who pour their time in there. But I was a late bloomer, so I didn't start running the 800 until my junior year of college, and my coach was willing to take a chance and had never coached someone in the 800 meters. So we just risked it together and figured let's explore what we could do in this area. So I stayed with the 4x400 meter relay and had amazing athletes on my team and teammates that pushed me all the time, obviously, but being able to have that consistency and camaraderie and then also be experimenting a little bit in that 800 meter distance for my last 2 years.
What position did you run in the 4x400? Did you, what was that sequence? Were you anchor? Where were you at in that?
For those who've ever seen me come out of blocks in any of my track days, this will be humorous, but I was the lead leg, so I popped out of the blocks. But we kind of had the mindset that if I could just not trip coming out of the blocks, I could hopefully make up some of the distance later.
Oh man.
I had
that is probably one of the more stressful ones, because you come out of the blocks, you get, because if you start poorly, it is hard to make that up, right? And you got that first initial handoff, which is probably a little stressful too. But yeah,
how hard is the handoff? That's what I'm always curious about. Like Ted and I were actually watching did we ever figure out what that was? Was that like nationals?
I did. I looked it up. So just I think it was just the college women's nationals was just this last Saturday. Saturday.
But I was wondering, they were doing I think we just maybe finished the 100 relays, right when we started watching, and there was a missed handoff, and it made me wonder, like, how hard is that handoff?
I definitely can't speak to the sprints. Those are the tough ones. They're kind of flying blind, and it's a perfectly oiled machine. With the 4x4s that I ran on, where you could do an open handoff, you could be looking and reaching back, and I guess it really just gets trickier if everyone's coming in at the same time. So that's where you can throw some elbows and bump around a little bit. But most of the time, it's definitely not as on the edge of going either way as those 4x1, 4x2s.
Sure. Did you run these same events in high school? I
did the 200 and the 400, and then those relays as a high school athlete. So I thought I'd be a 400 meter runner in college. And I think, as a lot of athletes find, everything's more competitive. People are better. People are faster. So we were thinking 400, maybe 600 in college. I would definitely not be able to keep up in the 200 meter. So I never really thought I'd be running the 800. I had run one or two of those in club track in high school, more just for training and expanding depth training effort and being able to tap into that. But I never thought I'd be a mid-distance runner, for sure.
In high school, was track like a big priority for you? Like, was that one of your big focuses? Was the goal to be a collegiate runner?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know if I thought about running college track. I think I just was so focused on those seasonal goals. I wrote my goal times on sticky notes and had those in my bedroom as a high schooler. And my track team was family. They were friends. That was the social group. And I did club track in the summer, and I just loved it. I wasn't a very physical athlete, and so I didn't thrive in basketball or soccer, those kind of settings. And so track was just kind of my place of peace and where I found a lot of joy and passion. So I did the Olympic lifting sessions where they would do in the off season and increase weight capacity and strength performance, and then doing indoor track and outdoor track. So
was there like a competitive drive in high school as well? Was it just simply like you just enjoyed it so much, like that was your main anchor?
I was really competitive. I would I'm a creature of routine. I thrive in routine and having that, what I know what to expect, and I enjoyed holding myself accountable to those things. So I really lived for showing up to practice and knowing what I had to do. And I probably could tell you, I could count on one or two hands how many days I've stayed up, till past 10 p.m. as a high school or collegiate track runner. I got my sleep and did those things.
It's funny from my perspective as both, in the fitness industry, and I am a big fan of sport and sports in general. And you start to see like some correlating things with people that are invested in different sports, right? And so when you say you're a creature of habit, I think track is probably, the perfect fit for you, right? Like it's routine and it's rhythm and it's, being able to perform, consistently, right? And so, it's just little things that, kind of the light bulb goes off in my head when I hear that. But it does sound like you're committed. What did the conversation look like when was it your idea? Was it your coach's idea? It sounds like maybe a little bit of both when you decided to, go from the mid to short distances, 200, 400 to more the 600, 800. Was that your idea, coach's idea, a little bit of both? What did that conversation look like?
Yeah, in college, so after my sophomore year and starting junior year, reflecting back and being able to assess what have we accomplished so far, where do I want to go? And I think also being able to have that realistic self-assessment. And I think of myself as I appreciate feedback and coaching really well. I think I like knowing what lane I'm in. So also being able to have that real conversation of, here's where you could go in the 400 meter, and is that enough? And where could we change direction? And would that actually open up other avenues or opportunities for success, whatever that definition of success is? And so I think saying, yeah, shoot, let's look at the 600. Success has been more in XYZ than the 400. So what if we did the 800? What if ... So.
Well, that's good. And then I think too, it's, I think like my question is, you'll have to maybe educate me and maybe some of the listeners too, when it comes to being, declared like an All-American in track and field. Is that something that like, I know some sports, there's like a committee that votes on it and whatever. In track and field, like, is it reliant on like, I know obviously it's reliant on performance, but is it like you show up to a meet and I have an opportunity to become an All-American at this meet? Or is it something at the end of the year that you're kind of awarded?
Yeah, it's a meet. Your eggs are all in one basket. The end of indoor season and the end of outdoor, you have qualified and are headed to the national championships, and you have an opportunity to step up and perform that one time. And that's where, if you fall in the prelim and you bump around too much and you get tripped up, and that's, anything can happen if you aren't on point on that one meet. So it is a high pressure meet in that regard. And I think for that makes it even more exciting and the opportunities even greater because of that.
There was something that I heard, and I don't really necessarily even remember what the analogy was for, but it was about, performance. And like you said, you have to show up, and if you trip and it's just all reliant, like you still have to like go big or go home, right? You put all your chips into the middle of the table. And it was like when Usain Bolt was on his tear, right? And you're like, oh, Usain Bolt, obviously the most fast person in the world, right? The fastest human to ever run, whatever. And you're going and you watch him in the Olympics, and you're like, oh man, he's probably gonna win. He might break the record, whatever. But you have all these other guys in lanes next to him. If he trips and falls out of the blocks, yes, he might be he doesn't get the gold medal. He doesn't get a retry. He doesn't get an opportunity. So like, the pressure is still on, even if you're expected to have success. And it sounds like you had success leading up to, these races, and, then indoor, outdoor, and you have the potential to become an All-American. Is that something that you knew going into those events? Like this was for the opportunity to become an All-American? And if so, like what did that mindset look like? What were you thinking about the day before, during the, during warm-ups and before, right in the blocks? Can you take us through that?
Yeah, I felt so much consistency between high school experiences, collegiate, post-collegiate, where I'm so fortunate. My coaches and the atmosphere I trained in, absolutely, there's a high-pressure stake at these big meets, and sometimes it goes my way and sometimes it didn't, but it was also just another meet, right? And so I think being able to show up and push the boundaries in workouts Monday through Friday and do all of those small items on the checklist and treat practice like a meet and treat a meet like practice. So absolutely, there's a respect for the meets and when those race days show up, and mentally having to acknowledge what it is and what you're towing the line for. But also, I think there was a lot of comfort in acknowledging how many 800s have I run? I'm just showing up and towing the line. And this actually isn't any different. It's another 2 laps outdoor, 4 laps indoor around the track. And I can't bank on anyone else's performance or them doing anything else. I can only control what I know I've prepared to do. And so I think there's two absolutely different aspects of thought process for it. And one of them is acknowledging the pressure, but also saying, hey, I've done this so many times before. And at the end of the day, it's my spikes on 2 laps of a track. So here we go.
It's like that run your own race, right? It's like literally comes from that. It's interesting with like track and field, you don't have like this direct competition, like, with football, like there's an opposing force that's very evident. right? Someone's literally trying to stop you to do something. And that applies to soccer or field hockey
Nobody's
or whatever.
like, you're not trying to dodge somebody on the track, Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you are a little bit in some of the relays.
Dodge some elbows. Yeah. But like, especially on those shorter distances, there's no one like directly standing in your way. So it's literally like you said, like you and your cleats and, whatever the distances you're doing. And there's probably like this anchor to that. I feel like I've said anchor 3 times now. But like there's anchor to that. Like, okay, I can really ground with that. Like I know what I'm doing. It's just this. I've done it X amount of times and I just have to execute. Is there like a comfort in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the very, very beginning of developing the passion I had for track was my sophomore year of high school was the first year I ran and made it to the state meet and had no idea what I was doing. And my high school coach gave me that entire pep talk you just shared, Cody, and said, run your own race. And there were 2 absolute beasts of runners in the final of state. And, the best I was going to do was going to be 3rd, but we just focused on, I literally was in a lane the whole way. It's a 400 meter. There's no cutting in, and just being able to be competitive, but also know what's my goal for the day. And the home stretch, the last 30 to 50 meters, they both went out, they raced each other until they both blew up. One of them pulled a hamstring. The other one just hit a wall and almost crawled across the finish. And I was so blessed. I ran my own race and won state as a sophomore because of that coaching my coach had given me of, you can't control those other people, but understand where we're trying to go today or what our goal is today. And it might be different than anyone else's. And yeah, on another day, I might have finished 3rd or lower than that. And it just happened to be that it ended up the way it did.
That's so interesting.
I think too from an early, like maybe you've thought about this, maybe you haven't, but I'm sure you have in a way, like at a young age as a sophomore in high school, you learned that like it proved itself to you that you can run your own race and have success, and you don't have to, you can put the blinders on. We're using a lot of analogies here, right? Run your own race, stay in your lane.
Running's so perfect for.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of analogies come from running.
Yeah, but you're right? Like it was successful for you. You didn't have to. You succeeded by just doing what you could accomplish. And I think when you think a lot of like top performers in whatever industry, if we want to use sport, basketball, or business, whatever it might be, like a lot of times to be successful, you're not asked to do anything that you haven't done before. Like like if you're gonna take the game-winning shot in basketball, it's likely not going to be like a behind the back half court shot. Like you've spot up from 3 and you've tried that and you've made one probably before in your life. Otherwise you're probably not on a basketball court, right? Like, or whatever it might be. If you have to give a speech for a potential business client, whatever, like you're going to practice it, and all that stuff still is going to bring nerves because you care and you want to succeed. But in the end, it's something that you've done before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of like what you've done before, I'm curious, especially at the collegiate level, what does that training look like? And I know it's very team based and there's probably a structure with that, but can you give us kind of a rundown on what's a Monday through Sunday look like on average? And we'll say in season, right? Because I know out of season is quite different, but what's an in season kind of week look like preparing for a meet as an example?
Oh, wow. This is going back into a decade ago of track workouts. I'm going to have to pull out my track logs. Man, I think, getting in speed at the beginning of the week. So I'm probably going to be missing some of my days here. I'm a human who lives on sticky notes. So recalling 10 years ago of memory, I'm going to be rusty for those track athletes who are still at it. But I think being able to have speed work on Monday and hard workouts either Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday, looking at getting in, depending on the week, in season or off season, a couple of those high volume workouts. And there's also easy runs, so recovery runs. A lot of the times when we would do lifting Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 or 7 a.m. And we also had afternoon track workouts. And Tuesday, Thursday might be 2 easy runs that day, one in the morning, one in the evening. And then the classic weekend long run. So Saturdays or Sundays I think we would shoot for 6 to 8 miles as mid-distance and sprinters, and then having an off day in there. And certainly that's evolved from when I was a collegiate runner to post-collegiate to then what my training looked like in the last few years of increasing that distance, but having kind of that every other and being able to tap different muscles. So using different engines too.
Yeah. I'm surprised that, and I don't know that much about, collegiate track training, but I was surprised that you're running 8 miles, at the end of the week, for a longer distance run for, folks that are running 600 meters, 800 meters. How did that kind of, did everyone like doing that? Or was that more of a like, hey, you got to do this type of feel?
Yeah, I wasn't great at it. I always had headphones in and was listening to some great jamming playlists to get me through it, and being able to get an hour-long run in and have not an easy pace, but be at that consistent pace, I guess, being able to stay in that zone and have that, just to use a different part of the system, right? So not
Sure.
using the same as the speed workouts or the race pace workouts, and being able to still get that cardio in. So I wasn't great. It was great when you could connect with teammates, and we did a lot of runs as a mid-distance group as 400, 600, 800 meter runners. And I think that also then, not to jump ahead, but that evolved into my desire in hindsight when I was done with track of saying, what am I bad at? Being patient and doing long runs, and how do I want to push myself there?
Well, let's talk about that. That's a good maybe segue to that. And, was it a year ago that you completed a 100-mile race? Is that right? Can you give us the date on that, or the month, year?
Yeah, I know 2020 seems like it didn't really count as a year. So it was in 2019,
Okay.
October of 2019. So about a year and a half ago.
So what was maybe you had already alluded to it. What was like let's do this. Let's do a 100-mile race. What was that like?
I think this might lump me in with a lot of other people, but I had read Born to Run.
As have
and
I.
I know that started, right, the whole barefoot running trend, but what I kind of took from it was being able to, in the cheesiest and best way, I can do those things that are impossible, and I just need to convince myself of that. So even when I was still competing after college in track, I kind of always had that voice in the back of my head of someday I would love and hate to try an ultramarathon. I couldn't even imagine running a marathon. And after the 2016 Olympic trials, I decided that was the end of the road for me in track and field. And I didn't really know how to navigate that, but I knew that the next step would be trying to push myself in that way. I had no idea how I would get there, but trying to plan that and create that long-term strategy of how do I get to my goal.
Well, where did you start then? So, it sounds like 2016 was kind of where you kind of switched gears a little bit. What was that first step? Was it just going out for a run every now and then? Like, what did that look like? Was it more formal than that?
Yeah, I definitely had an athlete crisis, right? So I didn't know how to navigate my relationship with running. I didn't have to do track workouts every day. I had no reason to do that. I was kind of having this self-identity crisis. So I had that probably for all fall and all winter. I wouldn't run. Eric would head out for a run in the winter, and I'd be like, oh, cool, I'm going to be drinking coffee on the couch.
Can you share who Eric is, just for context?
Yeah, my boyfriend, Eric. So he is an 800-meter runner. We are both competing at Iowa, and he still is competing professionally. So we have always had a good relationship with being able to, running's been a part of our home for a long time. And he would go out to do his workouts, and I think I would occasionally pop out to title boxing or to yoga, and being able to, explore what I actually wanted to do. So long story short, and then he's actually been my coach through all of this. So all of my marathon, ultramarathon, 100-mile training plan have been from pushing Eric to take a chance. And again, I guess that's kind of the theme now, isn't it? Me getting a coach who takes a chance and explores an area they're also new at. So he wrote my training plans for those, but we started with a marathon just over in Peoria in 2017. 2018, I did my first 250 milers. And then 2019 did a 50 miler and then my 100.
Awesome. How was that first marathon? How'd that go? Was there any like significant event, like any emotions that were tied to that?
Yeah, I wanted more. I was so lucky. Everything, weather was perfect. Situation was perfect. It was a really easy, laid back, but alive course. It was just Peoria, Illinois. I just wanted to do something to have as a training run, but be in the atmosphere. Eric really pushed me to do a marathon that was timed so that it would get my headspace back in that race mentality
Sure.
and have those nerves. So I felt great. I didn't bonk, which was really lucky. I finished the race and was like, oh, I want to keep going.
Did you have like a goal time that you wanted to meet? Did you meet that time if you had one?
I just wanted to finish.
Okay.
I just kind of wanted to see how my body would feel being in that space for the first time. It'd been, a year since I'd done any kind of race, any kind of organized race. So just exploring how I think I also responded to that mentally and emotionally.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Ted.
No, I think this is all very interesting. And look, I'm not going to try to compare myself to, a 2-time All-American and a 3-time Big Ten champion, but like I think that athlete crisis is a real thing. And I've heard a lot of people kind of talk about it. And I feel like I even deal with it. I'm just a high school athlete who loved, played all sports, and then after high school you get into whatever you get into, whether it's rec league, pickup basketball, and then eventually like I had Cody and I, we have CrossFit backgrounds, and I tried to compete in CrossFit, and then it's like now I have 2 kids, and I still very, very much love the chase, and I love the grind, and I love to work out, and it's kind of silly sometimes to think about like working out competitively, which CrossFit is at time, like competitive CrossFit, but I don't have the time or the energy to devote to it, and so for me to like mentally like take a step back from that has been a challenge, and It sounds like you had a little bit of a struggle with that, but you were able to kind of find this marathon ultra, like little bit of stepping stones to kind of lead and kind of guide you a little bit. I want to hear, before we got on, you were talking a little bit about your boyfriend Eric, and you said you actually leave for Olympic trials. You said tomorrow or the next couple of days or so. What is he? You said 800 meters. What is his? What are some of his accomplishments? Because I think that's cool too. And then tell us about the Olympic trial process.
Yeah, so he also, the numbers are going to be rusty, but he's a multi-time All-American, Big Ten champion. The guys' track team had won Big Tens. So being able to have those kind of accolades, he's set American records, world record relays, and the accolade list goes on, but he's a phenomenally consistent runner and has been running the 800 meters professionally since 2012, which was his last collegiate season. So we leave for the Olympic trials today as soon as we hop off this podcast together.
Yeah.
And we hop on a plane to Eugene, Oregon. So there's 3 rounds for the 800 meter. The first round is this upcoming Friday. And for any event, those are going to be qualifying. So those change. It might be the top X many people in each heat plus the next how many fastest times. And then you qualify through the rounds Friday to Saturday, Saturday to Monday. So it'll be a few rounds of that day by day.
Yeah. So my next question is, he graduated from the University of Iowa, he said, in 2012. So he's not a young buck anymore, is he? And he's probably competing against young bucks. That's pretty, is that, and is he kind of an anomaly in that sense? Is that common, or what, what does his competition level look like?
A lot of young runners, the collegiate athletes, right, we were all just talking about NCAAs, and it's insanely amazing watching those athletes and those times and performances. And a lot of those people go pro after, or you might have a few cases of where they'll run professionally and their collegiate career early, but you get such a wide array of people competing at the trials or at the national meet each year outside of college, where you might have a 17-year-old and you might also, in Eric's case, right, having people in their 30s. So being able to approach that and really lean into experience, and he travels a lot and runs a lot of 800s each year internationally and nationally, and being able to really lean into all of the race experience and also consistency in training. So as I said, he's still with his collegiate track coach, who's given a lot of consistency and reliability through that time. So it hasn't been a huge wavering back and forth in training strategy.
I wonder, and it makes me think about, the aging athlete, and usually the hardest thing from my understanding, my perspective, is recovery, right? So has that changed both, maybe from your perspective, watching him run his 800s from 2012 to really almost 10 years later professionally, but also for you, how did that look, and it's hard to compare apples to apples too, running, a 600 meter versus running 50 miles or a marathon or 100 miles ultimately. What does recovery look like to you over the last 10 years?
We both joke that we're getting so old when we wake up in the morning, right? You have all those aches and pains. So that definitely has happened more often now than it did over the last 10 years. And what it looks like now is just being more in tune. I also think that's the benefit of getting older and
Sure.
being being a more experienced athlete being whatever you enjoy doing and what you love doing day in and day out. But I think understanding your body better and what you need can change a lot. You might not need to do the same training to get to the same place that you needed years and years ago. And so I think having a foundation and also just listening to your body. But I know I experienced knee issues when I first started doing distance running, and I had been someone who did Olympic lifting all through high school and college. And then it was realizing that my body actually I started doing a lot of bar workouts, and I thought that, I immediately saw all my knee pain go away, and I haven't had knee pain since. So being able to also understand how to shift for what my body needs year by year and not really having it be just a blanketed go-to.
Yeah. And you're saying, so you didn't run through knee pain, you stopped and you figured it out, resolved it. Okay. I just wanted to make sure
it's not just going to go away overnight.
Yeah. I think just for people listening,
Yeah.
Take some ownership and kind of figure out what you need. And maybe that's some strength training, some bar work, whatever the case may be. Are we talking, like, maybe just to clarify, are we talking like bar, BARRE?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. That's what I thought. Absolutely. I've never tried that. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, I just absolutely loved. I started going to some bar classes at Downward Dog here in town, and I just, it felt really accessible to me, somewhere where I was already going for very occasional yoga classes, and bar definitely felt out of my element. It was a lot of low volume, right? I was maybe holding 2 or 5 pound weights or none at all, but a lot of balance and core work. So pulsing, maybe you're doing 100 squats, but you might be changing your foot direction and toes in, toes out, pelvic tilt, what are your arm motions, and really targeting those muscles. And so for me, I really found a lot of benefit in my lower body and how I saw that affect the carryover to me being able to run more healthy.
Absolutely. So you're now pain-free in terms of the knee. And did that start like pretty quickly, or was that something that, like, after maybe you've done a couple marathons, that started to show?
It started, I think, after the marathon, as I was getting into the ultra marathon training. And my disclaimer is I also hit a point where I felt really at peace of being done with Olympic lifting. I loved that. And for me, I was ready to do strength in a different form. And for full transparency, I just stopped doing strength work. So I was just loving running and in a place where I was vibing with who I felt I could be on a long run. And I wasn't supplementing that with anything. So that's a very obvious recipe for disaster. But being able to also acknowledge, I loved to pop in for boxing or a random workout with coworkers or teammates or friends, and my body, I wasn't setting myself up for success when I was just running day in and day out and then expecting myself to be able to pivot in a lot of high intensity boxing classes and not have any strength training to fall back on.
Well, it sounds like you kind of adopted a more well-rounded approach towards just fitness in general, right? Another thing I'm really curious, and before I bring it up, it's going to tie in with this shameless plug for the IC Weightlifting Summit that's going on. If you guys haven't checked that out, check it out. Where should they go to find more information about that, Cody, real quick?
They need to go to either our Instagram or Facebook page. There is no website. So Instagram or Facebook, IC Weightlifting Summit will get you there.
There you go. So do a lot of runners implement Olympic style weightlifting, or is that just something that you, was that kind of one of your passions, and how'd you get into that?
That was just a standard for track. So
Gotcha.
We would have scheduled, that was a practice, right? So it was your morning lifting, and that happened 2 to 3 times a week, depending on being in season or off season. And I did that through high school and college, and certainly it varied a lot as athletes get more mature and you can handle more weight, and being more experienced in that and what your events are is going to drastically change it as well. But that was just the normal part. So squats, deadlifts, cleans, all that good stuff, and being able to also do medicine ball work. So it wasn't just all with a bar day in and day out, but it went just drastically from being a really balanced, what a track athlete needed. And then I told myself, I'm not a track athlete. I'm ready to be done with all of that. But I unfortunately didn't carry any of that knowledge with me.
Well, you did in a sense, though, because you're able to reflect back and say, hey, that was really useful.
Yeah.
What did, so the training methodology or the Olympic style weightlifting, did that, was that different for sprinters versus long distance, mid distance? I mean, what kind of volume did that look like? Because I mean, not knowing a lot about training for track, I could definitely understand and see why a sprinter would want to be more explosive and train some of those Olympic style lifts. But yeah, what did, just real quick, and again, you don't, like you said, you're the bullet, or you're the post-it note person, sticky note person. What were just some of the really vague differences between somebody who was maybe strength training for like the shorter distance versus the longer distances?
Yeah, I think of doing squats, right? I think I could get up to, my max was probably 245 or 230, and being in that range of max squats. And those are skills that I needed for 4x4 and 800, whereas I never ran a 1500 or 3K. That sounds terrible to me now. In college, and I am not a coach in any capacity, but that's going to be tools that would actually be irrelevant for a longer distance runner to have. And certainly muscle is going to carry weight with it as well. And it's not going to serve anyone if you have tools that you actually don't need in the type of training or the races that you're doing. Whereas if I leaned more into the lighter weights or low volume, high rep, that's also not going to help me get out of the blocks. And we all knew I could use all the help I could get for that 4x4. So being able to have coaches who understood what kind of skill sets you needed for your specific event.
Absolutely.
So I want to segue a little bit to this now, to kind of your current job, right? So you're the manager of the Iowa River Landing Lululemon store in Iowa City. How did you get into working with Lululemon, and what does that look like? What do you love about your job?
Yeah, it all happened during that crisis I was referring to after 2016 that put me on a beautiful path towards what I love doing now. So after I finished racing at that point, I was in a job that was extremely flexible for being an athlete who traveled and had plans come up at last minute, and it wasn't something I wanted to do long term. So I did a lot of self-reflection, read a great book, Finding Your Own North Star, and just did a lot of deep dive into self and what my goals were, or maybe not even that, but what lit me up today, or what do I find joy in, and how can I make that long term, and having great mentors who took time to coach me through that. So it just so happened that one of our friends from Collegiate track, who was in the know or had a relationship with the team who was opening the Lululemon when they were first coming to Iowa City, gave me the hot tip that I should check them out. And so I did. And was able to connect with them and kind of start that path of transitioning careers, all at the same time that I was rediscovering a lot of different things about myself, including what I loved about running and where I wanted to go with a career. And it led me here today. And I just love being able to be in Iowa City at the place that I work at, Lululemon, and have so many connections and feel really fulfilled by community and, you know, personally, and the people I get to meet through the job I'm lucky enough to do.
You guys do an amazing job of lifting up the community, especially like the health and wellness community. And I've always appreciated that, being and living in Iowa City as well. So I know I want to talk about, because I know she has to go in like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk about the 100-mile race, like both in terms of like the lead up to it, the training, because I've seen you train because you'd run by my gym quite often. So I've seen you run by a decent amount. So I want to talk about like your training leading up to that. And then I want to talk about like the event, like that day itself. And then obviously like kind of that post-reflection component. So, you know, obviously training for a 100-mile race is different. Potentially, I guess, I don't know. I've never ran a marathon even, so I don't know. That's where we kind of differ. I also read Born to Run, and I had no urge to run further than a 5K. But what does that look like, training for a 100-mile race? Like, when do you really start to shift gears, you know, in terms of how far you are out of, you know, from that event? Do you start picking up your miles quite a bit? Do you do 10-mile runs, 20-mile runs? What does that look like?
It definitely was just high time commitment. So when I think back, it was sacrificing a lot of social time and family time. And again, there's something right or wrong for everyone in any moment. So for me, that was something I was willing to do, and had people who were really generous enough to allow me to have space and time to do that, work, family, friends, and all of that. But it was running 6 days a week, and I was extremely devoted to having one complete off day every week. So Tuesday through Sunday training, and the shorter runs would be maybe starting at 7 miles, and those would be because they would be high tempo or high paced tempo. Mm-hmm. So being able to hop in and do however many minutes on, however many minutes off, or a mile on, mile off. That's not an actual workout. Please don't go run that, but kind of looking at what that up-tempo work looks like. And so that would range from 7 to 13 miles as I built up. And then the rest of the days might be 2 6-mile runs, or being able to build those. So all of a sudden there's a weekday where I'm doing a 13 or 15-mile run in the morning before work. And we would always double back Saturdays, Sundays. So thinking of my max run was only ever 30 miles at one time. So even if I was training for a 50-mile race or a 100-mile race, I actually only ever ran 30 miles in one go. But we would really, Eric built into my training schedule that Saturday and Sunday, in the best way, we would kind of obliterate my body, but that also gave me a sense of confidence where I might have 25 miles Saturday and then have to get up and do 25 miles on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And really have that sense of peace going into a 50-mile or 100-mile race where, holy crap, I've never run 50 miles, or I have to double that to 100, but being able to say, okay, when the going gets tough and my body's sore and stiff and it's 12 degrees out, I can absolutely pull through and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you ever, so leading up to that and you're putting all this miles in, and there's a little bit of an unknown, right? Because you just said you never ran a 100-mile race right up to that point. Was there like any like waiver in your conviction of doing that? Like, or was it like, I'm in it, like I'm fully into this, like no waiver at all? What did that look like?
Oh gosh, no, there was lots of wavering. I think the closer the 100-mile race got, it was a lot of, I think, normal self-doubt, but mm-hmm. I had a lot of those moments of, who the hell do I think I am that I think I can run 100 miles? And I think that's where just being able to fall back on the support system. So there is an incredible trail running group, Trail Sisters in Iowa City. Haven't connected with them since pre-pandemic, but meeting these humans who, no matter what your goals are, there's a sense of stability. And I just had an incredible support system in some of those runners who took the time to include me and also support and encourage and motivate and be like your cheer squad. And then the people I work with and Eric and my family being able to say, whether you need an emotional hype squad or Eric would be very logistical and say, look at these workouts and look at these runs that you did. And the proof is in the pudding. The facts are there. It's going to be fine. And the other part of it too is saying, okay, we're just going to have to try it because honestly, no one knows what's going to happen after 50 miles.
Yeah. And self-doubt's like human. It's human nature to have self-doubt. We all have self-doubt about something almost constantly, right? Whether it's, a physical pursuit or our job or relationships, whatever, the list goes on and on. And having that rock, the person there, that's the emotional support, someone saying, hey, look at this, is like data, right? It's here. Like this is, you're good. That's very powerful. So you wake up, you mentioned like running in 12 degrees. So you did the 100 miles in what month?
That reference was just for winter running.
Okay.
Iowa winter running. I'm not a treadmill runner. Unfortunately, I don't have the mindset for that. So those were just long runs in the winter, but I did my race in October.
Okay, October. It could still be a little chilly, but so you wake up in October. It's the day of the race. What's going through your head?
Immediate dread. I woke up with a pit in my stomach and immediate dread. And that just lasted until the gun goes off. It's not as a pivotal of a moment as in track and field when the gun goes off, but the gun goes off and I think that all just fades away. And it's like, okay, I'm just running. I do this. I can run. And I think also I felt really open. My goal was just to finish. And I wanted that so badly. I wanted that in my bones. And I think also knowing, as in some capacity all athletes do, you could be the most experienced, the strongest, and sometimes days just aren't your days. So not in the sense of giving myself a way out, but kind of relieving that pressure of saying, I'm just putting one foot in front of the other and I'm going to push myself as much as I can. And I know this could go 50 different ways, but I'm willing to be on the ride. Yeah.
And that goes back to like what you're saying in your collegiate career or high school. It's like, hey, I'm running my own race here. It's just like you said, spike to ground and then go. Same thing, right? Foot to ground, go. And what happens, just putting, that effort in. So when that gun went off, did that dread just immediately leave in that like 100%? Or was that kind of still with you as you climbed through those miles?
The dread went away, but I think that experience ebbed and flowed a lot throughout the race. So I remember at mile 39 hitting a mental wall where I actually put music in and we couldn't have pacers or runners come and join us from our crew until mile 50. So it was actually the first time I ever ran 50 miles by myself because I'd had pacers in those 50-mile races. So I hit a wall and it kind of freaked me out, thinking I'm hitting a wall before mile 50 and I should be able to make it to mile 50. So now I'm a little nervous. And that was really tough. But I think, again, just I needed music. So I'm not going to pretend like I'm a martyr and keep running without music. I'm just going to pop my headphones in and put on Lady Gaga and keep going. And then having friends hop in with me and be able to run after that and just have so much grace where, after mile 80, 85, we would walk for 3 minutes and then run until our watches dinged for a mile. And that's how I got through the last 15 miles of the race, but being able to kind of have that pulse check every stage of the race and say, okay, now I feel terrible. And here's how we could kind of combat that together.
What's the justification? Go ahead, Ted.
No, you're good.
You have that sweet, sultry voice. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I find that all really interesting. And you alluded to it there. It sounded like at mile 30 or whatever. And, I was curious because I know that the race will have its lowest low. Was that the lowest low for you? And can you be, would you mind opening up and be completely honest? And this might be difficult. Was there a moment where you're like, I am not going to finish this? Or was it just like, this is really, really hard? I mean, did you have to balance those thoughts in your head?
I think my lowest part was hitting that 80, 85 miles. And for me, that was happening after midnight. So I finished my race at 3 a.m. and I briefly mentioned before, but I go to bed at 9 p.m., 9:30, and I do my runs in the morning. I'm a morning runner and I'm striving. I'm a morning person. And so for me, I kind of knew that I could expect that and it happened. I never hit a point where I thought, I'm going to quit. I need to drop out. There's no way this is going to happen. It was more just kind of being in that agony and sitting in that pain of, this is really tough, and it might even be tougher than I could have prepared myself for, and it's going to drag on for quite a while, and it's not going to happen quickly or easily.
So when you finish the race, what are your thoughts? Like, you cross the finish line, like, how do you feel? What's the physicality feel like? What's the mental state?
Seeing the finish line, it was hilarious. One of my family members was filming. Eric was my last pacer, so we actually crossed the finish line together, or he ducked out right before it, but I felt like I was floating. You know, I knew I was going slow, but I was like, oh, if I compare this to an hour ago, I'm cruising. So I kind of pictured myself cruising across the finish line, and I'll tell you, in the videos, I am like waddling with straight knees, straight legs, and that was hilarious. But I think just feeling kind of shock crossing the finish line, and then genuinely, I think my body actually went into shock because it was just a full all over body shakes, and I immediately just was freezing. And my mom and one of my girlfriends was trying to strip my racing clothes off and get layers of sweatshirts and the blankets on. But just having that out of body experience kind of mentally hitting this mountain that I'd been dreaming of for years, and the shock of crossing a finish line, and that means it's done and I did it. And then the physical reaction that I actually feel like I had no control in was just my body doing its own thing. Out of body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so this was middle of the night, early in the morning, you said, right? What events happened following the race? Was it like, were you on a little bit of a high, or did you crash and just like go to bed? Like, what did post race look like?
Yeah, I felt like I was on a high. I thought, oh my gosh, it's 3 a.m. I'm going to be awake forever. And then
you accomplished an amazing feat. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of being on that high, that adrenaline rush still going. And we all get in our cars, and this was we finished near Malecon. And so we had to drive home at 3:30 a.m. after. And if you think, yeah, I had people with me who could drive, but these humans had all been awake for 20 hours plus as well, in downpour rain, in sunshine, and like through the night to help me. So we were all wiped, and Eric stayed awake to drive us home. Everyone else and myself kept bobbing in and out of sleep, and I just crashed. We got home, and one of my girlfriends carried me up the stairs and like helped me move my knees to get me into the shower. And you know, we had Eric and our friends like helping carry our Yeti full of PB&J sandwiches and everything inside. And I just hit a wall. It was just a broken body the next day.
So we're 2 years-ish, right, away from that event. So looking back now, what's your like biggest takeaway, you know, that still like resonates with you on a high level?
I think taking the time to explore what I love doing and why I love doing it. Honestly, right now I'm in a huge running funk. I think coming off of that race, there's the emotional down after a big goal. And I think that combined with the pandemic and different losses that everyone experienced in some capacity, and I had it in some capacity in 2020, threw a curveball or a wrench in that. And I think trying not to be hard on myself and think back of the tools I learned in the best part of training for that 100-miler and saying, okay, you know, I went through this in 2016 and I went through hard stuff in that long goal race in 2019. And what I learned is just giving myself space to re-explore why I love doing what I do, acknowledging I feel like myself when I'm doing it, but it might show up differently in different stages of my running relationship.
Well, I think it's, I think that down is probably very, very natural in a lot of people. You know, we've even talked about it already on this episode, but I think something to kind of keep in mind, and we'll kind of, unless Cody has something else to bring up, we'll probably end on this note. Like that is something that, you know, Bethany Praska can put on her mantle forever, right? That accomplishment, like that accomplishment's not going away. You'll have that forever. And And yeah, it's hard to kind of, it's, you know, like, are you going to be an All-American again, right? It's kind of probably similar down ebbs and flows, but you know, I think you should be proud of that. And, you know, I know that you got to get going here pretty soon, and we thank you a lot for coming on and sharing the story. That's a pretty in-depth explanation of a pretty, I think, major accomplishment.
Yeah. Do you want to do rapid fire questions quick? I think we can literally do rapid fire.
Sure.
All right, let's rapid fire.
Be nice.
Yeah.
So it's just to get to know about you a little bit more, just kind of on an easy level. So, yeah.
Wrap it away, Cody.
All right. So the first one, do you have a go-to karaoke song? The more embarrassing, the better. And if you don't do karaoke, what would that karaoke song be?
100%. I've not done karaoke, but the songs picked out, it would be the Eurythmics, Sweet Dreams, because I don't have a singing voice, and I feel like Annie Lennox sits in that one tone where I might be able to mask it to stay there long enough to have a good performance.
That's a good one. All right, Ted.
I dig it. Where's the best place you've ever traveled to?
Oh, I loved being able to go to Budapest, Hungary.
Oh, that's on my list too. Yeah, my list too.
Do you have a favorite obscure holiday? So not your traditionals, but I need like an obscure one. Do you have like one that you just love? And no one's else is like, I didn't even know that was happening today.
Oh man. I guess short answer, no.
Okay. All right. Well, what is your favorite holiday?
I love Christmas. I think more for, I'm not a late night owl. We've already covered that. So New Year's doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
So being able to gather with loved ones. So I think when I think of Christmas, I think of being able to eat really good food. There's always hot food, desserts, snow outside, inside with loved ones. I think of Christmas tree and pine needles and candles and all of the homey, cozy stuff. So I just think of gathering being what I think of with Christmas. So gathering with loved ones.
Yeah, Christmas definitely leads like the holiday power rankings as far as like trademarks. Like Christmas has like this and this and this and this and this, you know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, my wife's the same way. She loves Christmas. If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
So when the pandemic started, Eric's brother lives right next door to us, and we all just kind of holed up together, and we created Mac and Cheese Monday. So every Monday we make a huge barrel of vegan mac and cheese, and that lasts us for a few days. But we've really, I'm going to say, perfected the art of mac and cheese.
That's awesome. Other than the obvious necessities, what is one thing you could not live without?
Coffee.
Yeah, that's almost even borderline obvious. No, not to discount. Yeah, that's my same answer too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Get me going in the morning, before runs, before a workout, all the time.
Who's the most famous person you've ever met?
Oh man. That's a tough one. I would think of being a kid on the train and meeting Ed McMahon. I don't know if that rings a bell from back in the day. And I remember being able to shake Obama's hand when he came to speak at the University of Iowa on his political run. And so I don't know if there's a most famous, but those would have to be people who other people would recognize their names.
Yeah. Which one stands out like in your mind more, like Barack Obama or Ed McMahon? Because I think Obama is obviously more famous than Ed McMahon, but when you're a child, it might have like a different, reaction.
Shoot, I don't think either. This might be late to the answer, but I don't know if either of you know who Dean Karnazes is, but he's an ultramarathoner and North Face athlete. And so, again, not the most famous to the general public, but for one of my 50-mile races, it was put on by North Face. I was a runner who brought my book with, so that after my race, when I was incredibly demolished and sweaty, I hunted him down to get him to take a picture and sign my book. But he's been an inspirational figure in the reading that I've done to develop as a runner. So even though those other two were more famous on paper, I'd say I had like a geek out moment meeting Dean Karnazes.
That is the answer then. That's perfect. Yeah.
Absolutely. Last one. If you were given a day free from responsibilities, how would you spend it?
Oh, I've been loving taking our dog on hikes. We'll go to Woodpecker or Hickory Hill. So I think a very accessible free day. I'm not talking like chartering a private jet or something, but
Yeah.
I think of bringing coffee and going on just the beautiful trails that are around here with our dog and being able to be outside. If I get to be picky, fall in Iowa, no humidity, perfect weather. So that would have to be my answer.
Yeah, rocking some comfortable athleisure wear.
Yeah.
Is that how you say? Is that how you say? Yeah. But anyway,
Athleisure
no.
wear, you bet.
Yeah, thank you. On that note, thanks so much, Bethany. This has been great. I really, really, really enjoyed kind of talking about that ultra stuff, and good luck to Eric.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Cody and I will be cooling it down right after this, but we talked about it briefly there with Bethany, but I just wanted to one more time plug the IC Weightlifting Summit taking place at Big Grove Brewery on August 15th. We're still going to release a few more details here leading up to the event, but if you're looking to volunteer, sponsor, participate, or just need any more info on it, please feel free to reach out to us. A lot of the things that we're kind of excited about here is just given the opportunity to showcase kind of what the Iowa City area has to offer when it comes to weightlifting, and we hope to introduce some people to the barbell a little bit, to some coaches in the area, and it should be a really, really cool time. So stay tuned for more details on the IC Weightlifting Summit. And then now Cody and I are going to cool it down. All right, and final segment here on Practical Wellness Radio. This is our cool down segment. We answer cool down questions submitted by listeners. And if you want to send us a question, if you have a question, you can send it on any of our social medias, Instagram, Facebook, or email us at info@practicalwellnesscoach.com. And today's question comes from Kendall. And Kendall is curious if we have any tips for choosing a quality protein if we want to supplement. And protein is probably the definite most common supplement that people are interested in adding into their diet, whatever it may be. But maybe before we really, really dive into protein, let's just talk about supplements in general. And Cody, you've got some facts. You and I were just even talking about supplements. What are some things right off the bat when you think about somebody who might be interested in supplementing?
Yeah. So I have facts. I have thoughts, maybe more accurate. Who knows? It's maybe up in the air in some context. But and I was also wondering too. I think protein is a very highly sought after, highly wanted supplement in the industry. I would probably put in multivitamins, vitamin D, things like that up there as well. Those are pretty common. But let's let's take a step back and think about maybe the why. Why are we taking the supplement? And that's going to be contextual. So just understanding that, not taking a supplement because you think you need to is going to be really important. And understanding where that kind of fits in the health and wellness, overall health kind of hierarchy here. So if we think about maybe a pyramid, really the first thing, the base of the pyramid should be sleep. Are we getting enough sleep? Getting enough sleep, again, that's going to be relative to the individual, age, activity levels, things like that. But obviously the standard answer is going to be 8 hours of quality sleep. Quality is important in that as well. And that's going to be more powerful than probably any pill or supplement that you're going to take. And then going up into that next tier of the pyramid is diet. So what you're consuming, how you're consuming it, why you're consuming the food that you are is really important. Again, there's going to be a high context here as well based off the individual, goals, preferences, availability, environment, so on and so forth. So it's going to be really important. Obviously, we encourage our clients to eat a holistic diet with generally low processed foods to reach most overall health and wellness-based goals. And then that next tier is going to be training. How are you training? Are you training too much, too little? What's the stimulus that you're putting on your body? And then obviously all the goals that go around that. And then finally at that very top level is going to be the supplements that you may or may not need to take when there's going to be, again, that why aspect. And the why can go into maybe you have a food sensitivity, right? So maybe you can't, you think about maybe fiber. You typically don't need to supplement fiber unless you're not adequately eating enough food that contains fiber. Like maybe you have an aversion to that. Maybe it doesn't make you feel that great, whatever the case may be. Maybe that would be a context of eating fiber. Or maybe you have an eating preference as well, right? And that might be a situation where it would be recommended to supplement with something, right? And I think about vegan, right? Eating patterns would be maybe an example of that. We won't get into that in specifics because that's a whole nother topic, but that could be another maybe why as well. Or maybe you just simply can't consume enough, say in this example, protein in a day that you feel is enough for you to succeed in whatever your physical or health-based goals are, right? So that'd be another aspect as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously protein, what I was, and just to kind of reiterate some of those things, like sometimes I feel like we're trying to dodge some questions sometimes because we often say like it's goal dependent, it's contextual, like, but that is what it's all about. Right. But I think that I would bet though that almost any individual can probably intake more protein no matter what their goal is. Right. Notice I didn't say can take supplement protein, right?
We definitely want to prioritize the food first because that's going to be a little more holistic in terms of vitamins, nutrients, and the make it of that compared to like just a whey protein or a soy protein or whatever the case may be.
Exactly. And again, like without trying to circle back too many times, but you can correct me if I'm wrong here too. Like if we're trying to get stronger, if we're trying to lose weight, two the most common goals people have kind of in this fitness realm that we're in. Like I don't think it's a bad thing to try to consume as much protein as possible. Granted,
it's going to be hard to hit it, especially if you're eating whole foods.
But at the same time, where you can run into you can run into some like
there's like a tolerable limit. Too much protein, I think it's like around 2 or 2.3 grams, maybe per. Gosh, I can't remember if that's kilos or pounds. I think it's kilos. You think it's pounds?
I think it's. Yeah, that could be right because I think it's like 1.2
pounds. Yeah, so the
1.2.
I think the 2 to 2.3 is in kilograms.
Yeah, so that could be about right.
Gram. That's pretty high. That's a lot.
Yeah. And so, you just, that is high, right? So you think about, I will use myself as an example, like 215 pound guy, like 215, pounds, that's 1 per 1. If we're looking at 1.2, now we're up to 230, right? And so that's a lot of protein to consume in a day. And which is why I supplement with a protein supplement.
But you have a lot of strength-based goals. You know what I mean? Like, so it's contextual too. Does a person that
exactly
is getting probably a gram or maybe even a little less, maybe even 0.8 grams per body weight is probably like the lower I would recommend. I'd usually try to get people to get at least a gram in per body weight. But again, that can be hard if you don't have like this strength-based goal. Like maybe you don't need any more than that, right, to maintain, to be healthy and to function well, right? Again, there's a lot of factors into that, right?
There are, for sure. You're right, and I'm like the dude who's always trying to get stronger. It seemed to slow down a little bit the last few years, but you're right. And so let's just say you're what, like 100 and let's say the average male is maybe 170 pounds, and you said 0.8 is lower kind of where we want to be. Yeah, exactly, the low end, and so that's 135 to 140 grams of protein a day, and that should be attainable. Definitely with whole foods alone. But it might be nice to have
that's the thing I thought too, is you don't have to use it every day.
That you can supplement if you don't have options. Exactly. And so you were telling me about there's some resources online that people can look up for supplements in general, or maybe
my favorite resource to look up supplements to get up to date
what are some of those resources?
Research data, recommendations, pros, cons, etc. is going to be examine.com. It's very research-based, very clinical, but it's very digestible. Like you don't need to have like this background in biology or anything like that to understand the information. It's very well presented. There's a lot of color coding. There's a lot of, just like green, good, right? Red, bad, things like that. So I think that's really, really great. And it even explains even if you wanted to take a deeper dive, it explains that stuff too. But I think that's probably the go-to source, and that's been around for a while. I've known about that for, 8 years or so. I can't remember where I first came across it, but that's been around for a while.
Just flipping through that a little bit, I'll be the first to admit, like, I think you and I, at times, do a good job of balancing each other out. I mean, we both have a lot of experience in the fitness industry, but you have a very, very, very much deeper understanding,
maybe sometimes,
of the, kinesiology, human biology, whatever, yeah, it's no, but when I look at exam.com,
part of it too is just like
you
knowing
said,
about those
you
resources.
type in a supplement, whatever.
Because I'm not sitting here reading like a physiology book every day, like, and it's been, I graduated with my physiology degree in, 2013, and that stuff doesn't necessarily stick around, especially as like an active coach. Like, you're not using most of that stuff. You're not using most of the clinical stuff because I'm not in a clinical setting, so you forget most of it. So knowing like where the resource is to find that information again or get a refresher, I think is probably the biggest tool or biggest strategy for that.
Yeah, and as a guy who took communications classes and broadcast journalism, so just the point I was trying to make is you go to examine.com, you type in a supplement, and it gives you like a 2-sentence write-up about it where it's like, this supplement is made for this reason, and maybe you might want to take it.
Right, and then you're like falling asleep.
Right. It's not like, okay, the cells in the body transfer whatever, it's like, it's very much layman's terms. And so I appreciate that. And that'd be,
and I think too is like, so kind of, where to go now to, you get more information about a specific supplement, what does the research say? Is this worth my money? Right. That's always a big thought, in my time. But once you kind of figure out, okay, yes, taking a protein supplement is for me, like that's just one step. Like, okay, what supplement do I take? Like what brand? And that's always really challenging. Partly because the supplement industry is very largely unregulated. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's like 1994. They passed like a bill or something. You have to look it up. But anyways, long story short, the FDA doesn't have to approve supplements to market them. So you and I can make a supplement and just start marketing it and selling it, right? So that can be a big problem. So it's on the consumer to then maybe parse out quality, which does take some time, right? It's on your shoulders, but it's worth doing, right? You don't want to be taking in things that you don't know is in there, which can be a problem sometimes, right? They can pump some of this stuff with fillers, with extra stuff to make it seem like it's working better. For sure. And things like that. So that's going to be really important. So usually you want to at least first check the manufacturer's website, right? Where are you getting this? What's the brand? And see if they have quality control practices that are in place. An example of this would be, do they have protocols? Do they test for contaminants? Are they really transparent with these things? That's going to be really important. If they're really closed off, you're having a hard time finding that information, that's probably a red flag. There are other companies' websites that actually test these products. These third, they're tested by third parties. So these products are tested by third parties. An example of this would be if you go to consumerlabs.com, you can search different supplements on there to see what they're saying. And then obviously you can go to the FDA's website too and see if the FDA sent warning letters to maybe these specific companies. That'd be a big red flag as well if they've gotten multiple warning letters, or a warning letter in general, we should even say. Just one would be a big red flag. So those are a handful of things that you can do to see if this is a quality source for your supplement, or maybe in the context of this initial question, for your protein.
Yeah, and so I think that's exactly kind of the write-in from Kendall, what she was kind of, I think, asking, right? And so we kind of danced around it a little bit, but that would be probably the best place to start if you're interested in finding a new supplement. Again, keeping in mind your goals and keeping in mind that we want to make sure it's a supplement, right? The definition is in the word itself, right? It is a supplement to your current diet and regimen. So like you said, those two, just to reiterate, resources, consumerlabs.com, examine.com. As far as other supplements, Cody, what are maybe at the top of the list kind of for the general population, some supplements that we might
I kind of call that
include?
Insurance.
I think the multivitamin is a great place to start, right? I think it doesn't hurt. Yeah, no, it's a great way to look at it. And really, it's like you start pricing some of this stuff out, like you said, for insurance or purposes. Like you can take a multivitamin for 4 cents a day, whatever those little tablets, right? You can get your multivitamins
Yeah.
And I'd still look those up and, make sure you're getting them from a credible resource and all that too.
I'm a big fan of vitamin D.
Can you think of any other
as one, especially
supplementation that maybe the general population
in these
should consider?
Midwestern states, northern states in the winter, vitamin D is a big one. Just because you're not outside. Obviously, again, just like food, we get vitamin D from the sun naturally, and that's going to be the best source to get it from. But obviously, in the deep, dark winter, it's a little harder to do. So I would recommend vitamin D. And I actually take vitamin D all year round. I'm not saying you should do that, but that's something that I do. Another one, those are kind of the primary ones, multivitamin, vitamin D, fish oil I take. I know you take that as well.
Yeah, that was the one.
Again, I do your own research.
What should we know about
but
fish oil?
What I would recommend is going to examine.com and checking that out, because I do want to wrap up pretty quick. Otherwise, it's going to get too long. So go to examine.com on that one. And then I do want to, as we wrap up, because I have to go here pretty quick too, to coach some clients. But so check out examine.com, check out fish oil. Another one maybe that you can maybe research too would be magnesium supplement. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, Ted. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I take a ZMA supplement. It's got zinc, magnesium, B12. And I take that before bed. And I think, just last couple points here, I think that we appreciate and we know that magnesium is important because it'll supplement our sleep if we struggle with sleep. Fish oil can help with cognitive skills. The vitamin D can help with immune deficiency. And so all these are kind of, especially with us at Practical Wellness, and we're trying to be, quote, practical about all this, holistic about all this. If you're sick, you can't train, you can't become healthier, you can't become more fit, right? And so, when we're thinking about supplements, we're after supplements that'll, one, like we talked about earlier, help move us towards our goals, whatever they may be. 2, keep us healthy. 3, help us sleep. And again, just keep in mind that these are supplements to our normal diet and regimens. That's all we have. If you guys need anything else, feel free to shoot us an email again at info@practicalwellnesscoach.com. Thanks, Kendall, for the question, and thanks, Bethany, for coming on the show. We'll talk to you guys next time.